Fawning in the audio between herself and Steve Sarowitz. Yesterday, the CD officially dropped and it revealed the conversation between Claire and Steve that took place at the end of August 2024. Feedback I've read so far is that the conversation might not be productive, but it sounds like mostly a nice civil one between Claire and her boss. People have pointed out that Claire's agreeableness, even a slight, maybe exaggerated enthusiasm, could be a sign of fawning, which I think is a fair consideration to look into. Fawning is a trauma response that involves people-pleasing tendencies in social survival, and it can occur in a way where by avoiding conflict or acting in a way that could avoid conflict, you feel you're protecting yourself against it, or you might behave in a way that forestalls perceived danger or threat. So in this recording, we hear Claire respond to Steve in mostly a pleasant and cooperative way when he brings up different challenges he was having and through the conversation. Some people might put this under appeasing umbrella. It is difficult without being able to view any sort of non-verbal aspects of Claire during this conversation, but we can derive a little bit from tone. The term of fawning was coined in the context of complex childhood trauma, so that you learn often through someone of power, and at a young age that can often be a caregiver, that safety is reaffirmed through appeasing others. So you learn to feel safe, or that you have this conditional safety with someone in power as long as you appease them. We do not know Claire's past, and I won't even attempt to speculate there. That even if she does have this pattern, I don't think it's evident in this conversation. Here's why. So fawning, firstly, would be a trauma response, and it would occur when the more vulnerable person is responding to someone in a position of power. Now, you can absolutely argue that Steve is in a position of power. He's her boss, he's a billionaire, and he's male. In the context of this conversation, that power imbalance isn't evident. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist in the bigger picture, but in terms of how the conversation is flowing, she continuously leads and also cuts him off.
So, basically...
Who was? Was it Sony or was it public? Yikes. That's icky. That's icky.
Oh, they went after everything we had. Luckily, I was out of it. So,
I'm glad.
Nobody had mentioned me. And then that's because I'm a nobody. I'm nobody.
We know who you are.
Yeah, but
it's kind of a blessing. Let me tell you, it's kind of a blessing.
I know. Well, that's right. No, there's all these things.
So fawning could sound a little bit more like responding to his lead and then showing agreeableness. She does in certain ways agree, but she often jumps in to agree. She's quite repetitive in the way she agrees. There's not too much depth to it. It doesn't sound like a fawning response. It actually often sounds like trying to move the conversation on. Fawning does often sound like agreeing with something that you don't believe in order to avoid this conflict. There are opportunities for her to do this around some of the more serious things and listen.
Splenner talked about was amazing.
Yeah.
Or was it the stuff that Brandon Splenner talked about?
Honestly, it's so tricky, especially, I don't know. Because I wasn't there, so I don't know what it was like.
I was.
You were there. Was it bad?
No.
Oh, God.
Justin never has a bad set. Yes, it was the worst set he's ever been on.
Now the fact that fawning is a trauma response. Can trauma responses occur outside of traumatic events, even years after? Absolutely. However, do the events leading up inside the conversation and the context she offered for that in any way suggest that there's a threat to her safety? No. I think it's wonderful that in the modern psychology world, we have acknowledged the interpersonal impact that trauma can present itself at. It isn't just someone who's been to war, right? Difficult conversations with your boss, if you even want to classify that as a difficult one, are not threats to safety. Navigating interpersonal conflicts at work are not threats to safety. The only thing that could be considered a threat within that conversation is the Hamas comment. And that from Steve was not directed to Claire in any way. It was still in the context of protection, some might even say a fight response. You could argue again that in her affidavit, she stated that she experienced verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is similarly considered often in the context of a pattern, not a single incident. I think it is quite easy to determine from the recording that there was not a relationship involved with Claire and Justin, especially from how Steve was speaking about it too, in the way of that she didn't know him too well. So for there to be verbal abuse, there would have had to be an ongoing relationship. It would have had to occur on a few incidents. It's not just a one-off berating like, the Ryan Reynolds. They didn't refer to that as verbal abuse. They said it was pretty full on. There would also likely then, if it was on a film set, be witnesses if it was multiple accounts. So I don't think anyone's buying that or looking at the fact that that's why she'd be fawning. Claire stated she was fearful that Steve might not continue the agreement. Fearful as in the consequences of that would be an impact on her movie, not a threat to her safety. These are ups and downs of life. These are not traumatic events. Another thing we might see in fawning is really trying to validate that person's beliefs, to affirm them, show empathy or compassion. I saw that Kirsty Flaw already pointed this out really, really well, that this is not present through this recording with Claire. She might have a sort of surface level warmth to her through the conversation, but there's no real empathy or concern for any of these challenges. Anything, there's sort of evidence of her trying to steer the conversation in certain ways.
All of our production is, almost all of our productions are like that.
I'm glad. Ooh, I also heard, wait, just total tangent ADHD. I heard the Hurricanes got their trailer premiered on NBC this morning.
The heart of fawning is putting others' needs above your own, and a real difficulty saying no. You might even be overly apologetic to this person in power. This is an evidence in the lead up or through the conversation.